So let's kick things off and take a look at how David employs utilizing chord extensions to his rhythm parts. So our first chord type that we're going to look at is based very loosely around the shape that he uses for those iconic 4 notes at the start of Shine On You Crazy Diamond, except I've moved it into a different key, so it is functioning slightly differently. We're going to be playing the 9th fret of the D string and then the 7th fret of the B string, but we're going to be using the open G and the open top E. So these are the notes. Now, the order of the notes that we're playing here, we have the B note on the D string. That's the 5th of the chord. Then we have the G note, which is the minor 3rd. And then we have the top E, which is the root note. Now, that's quite an unusual order of playing a minor triad, or an E minor, but then we're adding the F sharp note, which in terms of its position in relationship to E, that's called a 2nd or a 9th. Okay, a 9th is an octave higher of the 2nd. So when we play that chord, adding that note is referred to as a minor add 9. So this is an E minor add 9 chord. Now, if we take just the top 4 strings and we pick them in this order, we're going to play the D string to the B string, and then the G string, and then the open E. So we have this. Now, straight away, just by changing the order of the notes makes the way that the intervals are stacked sound slightly unpredictable. So again, that's kind of loosely based on the idea that you hear at the front end of Shine On You Crazy Diamond. Okay, let's take another chord type now. We're going to take our humble D minor chord, but if you remove the bar and just fret the root note on the A string. Okay, there's your D minor, but then by adding that E note, now E in relationship to D is a 2nd or a 9th if you look at it an octave higher. So this chord is a D minor 9. Now it's amazing how just by adding that open top E string to a humble D minor chord really changes the sound. Now, to make this a little bit easier, instead of holding that full chord shape, we're just going to fret the triad. And then what we're going to do is include the open E in the top. So let's employ the same picking pattern that we used for the E minor add 9. And you can hear it's got that real progressive and haunting sound to it. For the next chord of our progression, we're going to take a C major chord, but we're going to remove our first finger. So we've got a C major 7th. Now for this chord, we're going to play a slightly different pattern. We're going to play. So again, it's mimicking the pattern that we've already seen, so it's a familiar sounding pattern, but we're just changing the strings, so it's changing the sound of the pattern ever so slightly. We're playing the A string, followed by the B, the G, and the top E. So the only fretted note there is the 3rd fret of the A string, but it's good for you to be aware of the full chord form. And then to conclude this progression, we're going to play a very typical chord extension that David employs instead of playing an E minor chord. You'll hear this on songs like Breathe, for instance, off of Dark Side of the Moon. And it's a really straightforward extension. If you take your E minor chord, but take the note on the 2nd fret of the D string, which is the root note, and raise it by a whole tone, you get the 2nd or the 9th. So this chord is referred to as an E minor add 9. And that's a chord that he will use a lot, substituting it for a stock E minor chord, again, just to add some colour and extension to the sound of that chord, adding additional harmony. And a really cool technique to use here is to use like a reverse rake. So instead of just strumming the chord, take your pick, start from the top of the chord and just let it drag across, sort of arpeggiating and separating the notes. It's a really dramatic and expressive rhythm guitar technique. Okay, so let's put all of those chords together in a short practice progression. 3, 4. Okay, so now it's your turn to practice those chord voicings and then put them together in our David Gilmour style progression.